Continuing debate, the honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of my constituents in Chilliwack Hope. I will be splitting my time today with the honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's been an interesting debate this morning. We've heard from the government side, the Liberal members, talking about how this legislation is long overdue and how this legislation, how could anyone not support this type of legislation? Well, Mr. Speaker, the fact is that over the last couple of decades, and certainly even since this Liberal 8 long years of this Liberal government, every member of that caucus has voted against anti-replacement worker legislation on multiple occasions. The last 2 speakers have voted against anti-replacement worker legislation a couple of times each, both in 2016 and 2019. The Minister of Labour himself, who has been on a cross-country tour meeting with union leaders to extol the virtues of this bill, himself voted against similar legislation when it was introduced by private members in the Bloc Québécois and the NDP. He's voted against it on numerous occasions. So you'll forgive us if we will take with a grain of salt the high and mighty words and condemnations of other members of Parliament when this Liberal government has members, including the Minister of Labour, who have voted the other way on this bill on multiple occasions. So I guess what has changed? Well, we know what has changed. They owe their government and its continued ability to make lives more difficult for Canadians to the NDP. Yeah. And so this is the NDP backseat driving for this Liberal government, and the Liberal government is quite happy to go along as long as they get their chauffeurs for their ministers and continue to enjoy the benefits of power. So multiple times this Liberal government has voted the other way, so it's hard to take them seriously when they talk about the urgency and the necessity for legislation that they themselves railed against in the very recent past. So we'll take no lessons from the Liberals on supporting union workers. We also will take no lessons from this government, who wants to hector the official opposition about our support for workers when they are not only not supporting workers with their recent battery plant and energy projects, they're using taxpayer dollars to fund projects that are bringing in foreign replacement workers. Let that sink in, Mr. Speaker. What we're talking about is workers, union and non-union, going to work, getting up before it's light out, going to do their blue-collar jobs in many cases, sending a third or a 40% or 50% of their paychecks to different governments, including Ottawa, sending that money here for the government to take and give to multinational corporations who are going to use foreign replacement workers to build the plants. It's bad enough to bypass skilled Canadian labour to build projects such as the Stellantis battery plant. It's bad enough that they would do that and just allow it to happen, but to take the money that those workers have sent to Ottawa and use it against them is the height of hypocrisy. This is what the Liberals want to lecture others about replacement workers, and they're using foreign replacement workers not only at the Stellantis plant, but at the North Volt project in Quebec. We now know that hundreds of taxpayer-funded, which means worker-funded, foreign replacement workers will be filling jobs that should be going to Quebecers, despite over $7 billion in taxpayer subsidies to this project. So this is the record of this Liberal government when it comes to replacement workers. They're bringing in foreign replacement workers to do the work that we know Canadians can do. The idea they've talked about the Stellantis battery plant, that they don't have the specialized skills available to set up the plant. Those need to come by 900 to 1,600, depending on who you talk to, foreign workers from South Korea. Well, I have news for this government. We have the skilled labor that can set up those plants themselves. We know that if you give them the work, you give them the plans, you give them the blueprints, they have the know-how, they will get the job done.
You're here.
But this government is bringing in foreign replacement workers. What we have asked now, Mr. Speaker, because the government refuses to release the contracts on these particular quote-unquote investments of workers' money into those projects, Conservatives have demanded that the committee, the industry committee, take a look at this, and we are demanding the release of the contracts. How many foreign replacement workers did the government negotiate into these deals? They are $45 billion in the major projects. We know that now 2 of them include foreign replacement workers. We assume that the others do as well, but we want answers, and that's why the member for South Shore St. Margaret's has demanded emergency meetings on this issue, because we won't allow this government to just let this slide with $15 billion a crack at these plants and bringing in foreign workers. This was supposed to be about Canadian jobs. This is supposed to be about Canadian workers, and yet this government continues to provide the money that these workers, Canadian workers, send to Ottawa for foreign replacement workers. So that is absolutely shameful. It is reprehensible, and the official opposition is going to demand answers. We want those contracts released. And if the government is still proud of those contracts, they should have no problem releasing them. But of course, we have to fight tooth and nail every step of the way, and we're up for that fight as well. This government continues to punish workers, not just union workers, all workers, with their carbon tax, with their policies that are driving up interest rates, making it harder for workers to afford a home. So it's hard to take them seriously when they feign how much they care about workers, when everything they're doing is punishing those workers who simply want to provide for them, for their families. We saw this just this morning. A record number of Ontarians are seeking help from the food bank. That's the record of this government when it comes to workers. When people are using the food bank for the very first time, when 2 million people a month are using a food bank, when people don't know how they're going to afford to live in their own home when their mortgage comes up for renewal, when more money is going to service the national debt than is going to the health care facilities in the provinces that these workers have to wait 8, 12, 16 hours in to take their kids when they have RSV or other seasonal issues. When they're where they're sitting in an emergency room, they can know that because of the reckless fiscal policies of this government that punish workers, more money is going to service the Prime Minister's deficits and debt than is going to that healthcare system. So we will take no lessons from this Liberal government on supporting workers. We will support workers by standing up for the jobs that they need, for standing up for the projects that they work in. This Liberal NDP government has been the most anti-worker government in Canadian history, voting against, acting against, advocating against the major energy projects, for instance, that give family-supporting jobs right across this country. This government opposes those. So they can't tell me, and they can't tell members of the Conservative Party, that they're pro-worker when they're against the projects that workers need to put food on the table, when they tax those workers and send the money to foreign replacement workers, and when their policies are making the cost of living for those workers out of reach. Interest rates are going up and up and up. Inflation is going up and up and up. And this government is not only doing nothing, they're making it worse. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.